In this section, you'll be learning about how to create a Near Me application using UIKit. This application is going to allow you to search for a particular points of interest, and it's going to tell you the closest burger places, taco places, or wherever you're searching for close by to your current location. You can see that as soon as I search burgers, it's going to list me all the burgers in a nice list. But apart from that, you can also use the actual map and see all the different burger places. If I tap on any of these burger places, it actually pops up and selects that in my list so that I know that which burger place I'm selecting. I can also click on any of these places, meaning burger places, and get more information about them. If I'm running it on an iPhone or some sort of a device, I can call them, and I can also get the direction to those burger places ready in Apple Maps. So this is what we will be building in this section. So the first thing we need to do is to display map on the screen. If I run this application right now in my iPhone 14 Pro, you can see it simply displays a view, and that view is colored green. So how can we go about displaying a map view control so that all of our screen, the complete thing, is filled with the map view? In order to do that, the first thing we need to do is to import MapKit. The MapKit module, the MapKit package, the framework consists of the map view control that we can use. I'm going to go ahead and create the map view control as a lazy property. The reason that we're using a lazy property is that we don't really want to reinitialize map view control again and again. We just want to initialize it one time. So that is the reason that we're using lazy property, so that it can create the map view only once. We're going to go ahead and create the map, which is MK map view. We will set the delegate later, so don't worry about that. We will also say that show user location. Well, if the location is present, then show them. Map.translates auto resizing mask to false, because we will be putting some constraints on it. And let's go ahead and also return it. Great. The next step that we need to do is to utilize this map view and display it on the screen. Inside the view.load, I'm going to go ahead and call the setup UI function, which by the way doesn't exist. So a good idea would be to create that function. The purpose of setup UI is, as the name suggests, to set up the user interface. We're going to go ahead and add as a subview the map view. So the map view is added to the main view. Great. Let's go ahead and run the application and see how it looks like. Currently, you can see that nothing is getting displayed. The reason nothing is getting displayed is that we still have to configure our constraints. So let's go ahead and add constraints to the map view. Currently, the map view doesn't really know how to display on the screen, so perhaps adding the constraints is going to provide us a little bit of a help, and also providing help to the map view so that it can configure itself to be displayed. We will talk about the width constraint. The width of the map view will be equal to the view width, so whatever the view that the controller is providing, kind of like the root view. And then the width of the map view will be the same as the width of the actual view. The same thing goes with the height. And we want to center the map view in the screen, meaning the view center would be the map view center, so we can use that one. And finally, we can do the center in the vertical. Let's go ahead and build it and try to run it now. And there we go. At least we can see the map getting displayed. Now you will see that it sometimes gives these kind of errors being displayed over here. I think these errors are just coming from the simulator. We'll try to see where they're coming from, but you will see that most of the time these errors are just coming from the simulator. All right. Let's go ahead and turn off this show you the location. Sometimes that can cause a problem because we haven't really, as you can see, it was the issue because we haven't really made sure that we can access your location. But even with few lines of code, we were able to display a map. You can do panning on the map. You can do zooming. If you want to zoom, you can zoom. And it looks pretty nice. The next thing we need to add is the search button. That will allow us to enter a point of interest like a coffee shop or a burger shop. So let's go ahead and do that in the next lecture. Now let's go ahead and see that how we can display a search text field that will allow us to search for points of interest like coffee, taco shops, burger shops, and so much more. Once again, we're going to go ahead and create a lazy property. I will call it search text field. We'll start with search text field. And it's a lazy property because we only wanted this code that I'm going to type to be executed once. All right. So let's go ahead and create a search text field. You can call it anything you want. UI text field. We are going to make sure that the radius, since it's a little bit more, let's say, curved in nature, so corner radius 10, we will also clip to bounds so that those things are clipped. We are also going to set that the background color of the text field will be white, and we will set some sort of a placeholder text like search. Now, when we create a text field, it will be important that you put a little bit of a padding on the left side. If you don't, then it will kind of look weird. So the padding, one of the ways to add a padding is to set up the left view. And you can see that we are simply creating a UI view and giving it a width of 10. So that will add a little bit of a padding, and it's not going to hit on the left side of the text field. The padding will be displayed always. We're also going to make sure that the translate auto resizing masking to constraint is set to false. We are going to set some constraints on it, and then we will return the text field. Now, even though we have created this text field, we haven't really used it yet. So let's go down over here into the setup UI, and we want to put the text field above the map view. So I'm just going to say add the subview and the search text field. Let's go ahead and run this. Even right now, we haven't really put any constraints on it. So you can see the text field is nowhere to be found. Let's go ahead and start putting some constraints on the text field. We have to give it some sort of a height. So let's go ahead and add constraints to search text field. We're going to give it some sort of a height like 44, but it's up to you, whatever height you want. The X center, meaning we want it to be placed in the center horizontally. We can also give a little bit of a width to the text field. You will see maybe like width of the screen divided by 1.2. And then we don't really want the text field to be vertically centered, but it will be kind of like on the top region. So that's why we are going to use the top anchor and add 60 to it. The keyboard button, instead of the return key, will say go, and we will also eventually set up the delegate to be self. So let's go ahead and run it. Now you can still see that the text field is not really displaying. So this becomes a little bit of an interesting issue, that why the text fields are not displaying. All right, so let's go ahead and try to find out what exactly is the issue. Now, one of the reasons of text field not being visualized with our eyes is that the text field might be behind the map view. All right, so we can go ahead and call view dot bring subview to the front, and we will bring the text field to be on the front so that it's kind of like floating on top of the map. And there we go, we got our text field. And you can see that when I start my cursor, it's not starting from right over here. It's starting from a little bit of a gap over here, which is great. And this was done by when we were using, let's see over here, left view. So that's the important part. That is going to give you a little bit of a margin, and the margin that we are getting is like width of 10. So that is important for us because it will look really nice. So there you have it. We have created a text field, and other things that we need to do now after we are getting the text field is now we will be looking into requesting the permission so that we can get your exact location of the user, and then based on those location we can go ahead and probably offer them that, hey, these are the taco stores near you, these are the coffee stores near you, or whatever they're searching. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Now let's go ahead and talk about how we can request permission from the user that we need to use their location. Without the permissions, our app is not going to work because we need to find the user's location so we can give them points of interest that are close to their location. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and create location manager. Location manager, which will be of type CL location manager. Now, eventually we do want to initialize the location manager. So let's go back to our view.load, and we will initialize the location manager. Location manager equals to CL location manager. We will also need to set the delegate of the location manager to self, which means that all the different functions the location manager is going to call, delegated to, this will be delegated to self, which is, well, where we are, which is the view controller. So the view controller, in this case, will become the delegate. Apart from that, we need to call location manager dot request when in use authorization. There is another one which is called always authorization, which means it will always be authorized. But when in use authorization means that it is only going to be authorized till the point of when you're using the app. Next up, we can call request location. This is a one-time delivery of the user's location. If I try to build the app, it's not going to build because of the delegate that we have set up. We are saying over here that the self, which again is the view controller we are inside, is not actually the delegate of CL location manager delegate. So let's go and make sure that our view controller is the delegate. I'm going to go ahead and create an extension. You don't really need to create an extension, but it's usually a good idea to, divide your code. If you are conforming to a delegate, good idea to create an extension so that that particular extension is only handling those delegates. Now, one of the delegate functions, and there are actually many, as you can see, when I type location, it actually pops up did visit, did exit region, did end region, did update heading. So CL location manager provides you a lot of different delegates. If you're interested in when the person enters a certain region or exit a certain region, then you may be interested in implementing did enter region, did exit region, did range, and all that stuff. One of the functions that we must provide implementation for is did update locations. So we can just implement it. We don't really want to do anything else. And the other one is did fail with error. Over here, we can go ahead and print something. which is simply indicating that if there is some error, then just go ahead and print it out. All right. Now, if I run this application right now, it is still going to complain because we have to make a special entry in info.plist file, which we haven't done that. So let's go to the info.plist file. We'll click on the project. We will click on the info, which is right here in the middle. And over here, we can go ahead and create an entry. The entry that we are looking for is called when in usage description. So click anywhere and then try to add new entry. And we're going to paste that, which is called privacy location when in use usage description. The description that you're going to type as a value, that will appear in an alert box telling your user this particular message that I'm about to type. So make sure that you are clarifying that why do you need the location of the user. Near me requires location so it can offer nearby points of interest. But be as descriptive as you want. I mean, be as clear as you want, I guess. So make sure that you're very, very clear as why you are requiring the location of the user. Another thing that I'm noticing, at least in my info.plist file, is this storyboard file, which is kind of weird. I thought we deleted it, but make sure that you delete that also. So if you see main storyboard file base name, make sure that you delete that. Great. Let's go ahead and run this. Now when I run the application, it's going to show me this particular dialog, and you can see the message that we type in is appearing in the dialog. I will say allow once, and that's it. All right. Now currently it's not really showing me my current location, meaning if since I'm running on the simulator, the location should be settled on one of the predefined locations, but it's not really showing me where I am. Other thing to note over here is that if you are selecting the simulator, you can always go to the features location and set it up to different locations. I am setting up it to Apple, which means Apple Campus. But if you are creating an application where you want to find out if the user entered the certain region and then exits a certain region, meaning they are just passing by, then you can do a freeway drive or a bicycle ride and so on. You can even provide a custom location if you want to. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to make sure that the user location is stored, meaning it's displayed. So in the map view, we will go ahead and say, show user location. Let's go ahead and run it. And there we go. So we were able to show the user's location. And if you kind of zoom in, you will be able to find out that it's more or less the Apple campus. If I zoom in, you can see it's Cupertino, and there we go. It's actually right in the Apple campus and Apple Infinity Loop, right? Okay, so we're able to find the user's location. That's great. Now, it would be really nice if we can actually zoom into the user's location. All right. The other thing to keep in mind is that right now we are only requesting the location when in use. If you do want to request a location, like only for always, so you can always do request always authorization. All right. Request the user's permission to use regardless of the app is in use. So you can always use this one if you want to. All right. But if you're using this, then you will need to have a different key, which will be in info.plist. So let's go ahead and do that also. I will go and I will add a new key, which is called location always and when in use. Okay, so we can use that. And we can copy kind of like the same description over here. Now, which one do you have to use, or do you would you use? It really depends on your situation. If it's kind of like a one-time thing that you want to do when your app is in use, then I would say when in usage description. Location always simply means that it is going to be, well, it will have access to the location even though the app is not running. So it depends on the app, I guess, in the end. All right. Let's go ahead and run this. So allow once, allow while using the app, different option you can see. Again, I selected the first one and it's showing me the location. If I go ahead and run this again, allow while using the app, and again it shows me the location. Let's go ahead and run it a third time. And allow use the location when not using the app, allow always, or keep only while using. So you can see that the option keeps on kind of like a little bit changing, because now it's telling you that keep only while using or changes to always allow. Do you want to always allow it, or do you want to just only use it or only share the location when you're using the app? So it's kind of like it's up to you which path that you take. I'm just going to say only when I'm using the app, then yes, we can use the location. All right. So the next thing is, how can we go about in displaying or zooming into the current location? Because right now it's kind of like if I go ahead and run the app, you can see that it's very, very far away. I mean, there's no way I can tell that which street I am on. So it will be nice if we can a little bit zoom in to give it a little bit more perspective. So let's go ahead and do that in the next lecture. All right, so now let's go ahead and talk about how we can zoom into the user's location. But before we zoom into the user's location, we need to implement another one of CL Location Manager Delegate, and this one is related to the actual authorization. This one is called Did Change Authorization. This means that whenever the authorization is going to change, this particular function is going to get fired. Now, instead of writing code inside this function, I'm just going to go ahead and write a new function called check location authorization. So this particular function that we are going to implement, check location authorization, is going to make sure that the user is authorized to share their location. User has not denied the permission, or their location can be determined. So all of those things. All right. And I can implement it right there as a private function, because you don't really want to expose it as a public function. Nobody's going to use it. Only we are going to use it. Okay. Next, we're going to go ahead and get the location manager. We are going to make sure that we are unwrapping the location manager. And after unwrapping the location manager, we are also going to go ahead and get access to the location itself, the current user updated location. Next, we can go ahead and perform location manager dot authorization status. Now, there are many different cases over here. You can be authorized when in use, authorize always. So let's go ahead and implement authorize when in use and authorize always. So what should we do over here? Well, we're going to do something over here. Let's just don't do anything for now. Let's go ahead and implement the cases. What about denied? Well, denied means that the user explicitly denied the sharing of location. Then we have cases like non-determined, or we also have cases for restricted. In those cases, you can print out a message if you want to. And for the final one, for the default, we can simply go ahead and, say whatever we want. Okay, So now take a closer look at these cases. If the user is authorized, this means that it's going to go on line number 75 and execute line number 76. What do we want to do on line number 76? Well, this is where we can go ahead and kind of center the region, and we can focus on the region. So for that, we can go ahead and create a region using mk coordinate region. We can pass in the center, which is the location manager.coordinate, and the latitude. This is up to you, whatever you decide. I'm just going to pass in, let's say 750 and 750, but you can try to play around with these values. Once we create the region, we can set that region, mapview.setRegion, and that region will be set as animated also. Let's go ahead and run this and see that if it kind of zooms in or not. Well, kind of you already saw that it is already zoomed in, which is okay, that's fine. Sometime you will even see that it is zooming in, all right? So let's do one thing. Let's go and delete the app. There we go. And let's install it again. So we're kind of like starting from scratch. Allow once, and there we go. We zoomed in. Now, if this is too much zoom for you, then again, you can play around with these latitude and longitude meters. But if you think this is fine, then you can keep it like that. Now, what should you do in the denied status, non-determined, restricted, and default? Well, that's up to you. I mean, if it's denied, then not print it over here, but probably show it in some sort of a message that the location services has been denied. There's not really much you can do at this point. If you have been denied, they have to enable it again. All right. Location cannot be determined or restricted. For the default, it can be anything, I guess. We can just say at this point, unknown issue or unknown error, unable to get location. Okay. So there you have it. We have created our check location authorization, where we check the authorization once we find out that the authorization status is authorized when in use or authorized always. Then we create a region based on the location coordinate, and then we set that region to the map region. And that kind of makes that animation and focuses on the selected region or the user's region. All right. Now, next, we need to find out that how we can start typing in the text box, getting all the results back, what services we're going to use. So let's go ahead and talk about it in the next section. All right, everyone, let's go ahead and continue. And this time we would like to go ahead and create a function that will allow us to find all nearby places. If I go ahead and run the app right now, you will see that I will be able to see the map, and I will also be able to see the text box. But when I type something in the text box, let's say that I'm interested in eating burgers or finding out all the nearby locations, it doesn't do anything. In order to get access to the value of the text box when I press the return key or the go button, because if you scroll up over here, you can see that we are using the search text field over here, right there. So if I want to go ahead and set up the delegate, I can do that. All right. This means that whenever the search text field is getting fired, whenever the search text field, when we press the go button or the return key, we would be able to get that value. So what happens if I go ahead and say over here, search text field dot delegate equals to self. All right. Cannot assign value of view controller to type delegate. The reason it is saying that is that my view controller is not really conforming to the UI text field delegate. So let's go ahead and do that. Extension view controller, and we will say UI text field delegate, and there we go. Now it should be happy. Again, you don't really need to create these extensions, but extension definitely does help to make your code a little bit organized. In the UI text field delegate, we are interested in implementing text field should return, meaning when you actually pressed on the return button on the keyboard, this function is going to get fired. We will return true, and this is where we will like to get the text. So I would say text equals to text field, whatever the text field is, dot text, or give me empty. If the text field is not empty, meaning we have to put a not over here, then we will first of all resign as first responder, meaning we will make sure that the actual keyboard goes away. And now we will find nearby or search for nearby places. Now we don't really have a function to perform the search, so that is what we need to create. Let's go back to our code, and we can go ahead and create this function over here inside our view controller. Private function find nearby places. You are going to be passing in the name of the place. I'll just call it query. Okay, so finding nearby places. What do we want to do first? The first thing we need to do is to remove all or clear all the annotations. If there are any annotations, meaning pins on the map, we would like to clear it out. So mapView.remove annotations and mapView.annotations. So we're just clearing out all the annotation. Right now, we don't really have any annotations on the map, but if we had, we would like to clear it out. Next, we will like to create a request. This will be mk local search.request. Most people don't really know about mk local search, but Apple APIs provide you with this mk local search class that can perform local searches. Like if you want to get all the taco stores or the coffee stores and things like that, you don't have to use Google Maps or Google Places API. You can simply use mklocal search. Request.natural language query, which will be query, and then request.region in which you want to search, which will be mapview.region. So whatever the region mapview is providing at that point, we can just use that one. And next we can create a search, which will be mk local search, passing in the request. We will perform the search by calling the start function. This is going to give us a response and an error. If there is an error, then, well, we can't really do anything, but let's go ahead and unwrap the response. Response equals to response, while the error is nil. Else, if there is an error, we will just return and do nothing at that point. Once we have this response, we should be able to simply say response.mapItems. Currently, we are not displaying it on the screen or anything like that. We're simply saying response.mapItems so that it displays on the console or on the terminal. Let's go ahead and call this function also, find nearby places, and pass in the text. Great. And let's go ahead and run the app. Currently on the map, we will not be able to see anything because we're not really displaying anything, but at least we will be able to see something in our console. So keep your eyes in the console. We will be able to see hopefully something. I'm going to search for coffee. And there we go. We got something back. You can see all of this result is telling us about different coffee stores. There's something called Bakery Cafe, Mr. Green Bubble. Then you have another cafe, and then you have Coffee and Water Lab. And all of these places are near Apple campus because the simulator is currently simulating that part. It would be nice if we can display all of those different places somewhere on the map. So we can basically see on the pins that all of these places are available and how far are they from our current location. So let's go ahead and implement our annotations in the next lecture. Now let's go ahead and see how we can create our custom annotation. The only reason that we are creating a custom annotation is so that we can attach more data to it. I'm going to go ahead and add a new folder. I will call it annotations. And I'm going to add a new file, and I will call it place annotation. Now, annotation simply means that this is the thing that will be providing the data to the pins that get displayed on the interface. You can even change the display of the pins. You can go ahead and change it with a coffee mug or some sort of a pizza, but we're not going to that far since our places are very different. Sometime it will be coffee, sometime it will be burgers. So we need to be consistent in those cases. Let's go ahead and create place annotation, which is going to be using MK point annotation. So this MK point annotation is already available to you, and we can use that. In order to create a place annotation, you need to pass in the map item. Map item does provide you a lot of different things, which is a property called place mark, and you can access the country code, locality, meaning the street and everything. We will also go ahead and provide an ID for it and whether this particular location is selected or not. So we will simply go ahead and change it to false. We will implement the initializer where you have to pass in the map item, which is MK map item. And we can make sure that our map item is initialized. After that, we can call the init and then finally set the coordinate, which will be the map item dot placemark dot coordinate. So this will be the coordinate of the place that you have found. Next, you can expose different properties. We want the name of the place. That will be in the map item. So we can expose a property right there into our place annotation, which will read the property and give the property from the map item. If you want the phone number, you can also expose those places. What about the location? Yeah, you can actually expose the location also. Now, over here, we are saying that we will be passing a default location if the map item placemark has location not found. But we haven't figured out how to provide a default location. Okay, so not a big deal. We can simply go ahead and add another folder called extensions. And in the extension, we can add another file, which will be an extension on CL location. So we'll call it CL location plus extensions. And the only thing we're going to add is some sort of a default location, which will be Apple campus anyways. So let's go ahead and add that. There we go. Simple. The other thing that we want to add is the address. Now, address can be a little bit hard to get because address is part of the placemark.subthoroughfare, then thoroughfare, and then we have a lot of different properties. All right, so you'll see. So you can see that the address belongs to many different things. You have subthoroughfare, then you have thoroughfare, and then you have locality, and then you have country code. So all of them, when combined together, you can form an address. If you don't want this, you can remove it or you can form the address in some other way. That is perfectly fine. But we are just doing it this way. Okay, so we created our place annotation. Let's go back to our view controller. You can see that inside the find nearby places, we got the places, but we didn't really do anything with the places. So what should we do at that point? Well, one of the things that we can do is we can go through the responses. So response.mapItems, we can map on it. And for every single item, which is a map item, inside the map items collection, we can call the constructor for the place annotation. If you look at the constructor or initializer, you can already see that it takes a map item and it will be automatically passed. So this syntax is a little bit interesting because in this syntax we're saying that go through every single item inside the map items and pass individual items to the place annotation constructor or initializer. This is going to give us places, which will be an array of place annotations. Now we can go over places. So for each, we will get access to the place. And then we can go ahead and add mapView.add annotation and adding the place annotation. Let's go ahead and build it. Now, since we are using self, it may capture a reference. So make sure that we are adding the weak self over here and using weak self. So it does not capture the reference and hold on to it. After this, let's go ahead and run the application. And we will try to see that if we can search for coffee stores. And there we go. When we search for the coffee store, wow, that's a lot of coffee stores near the location, near Apple campus. If I select in a coffee store, you can see that it doesn't really give me any further information, but at least it does that nice animation. That is just by default. Pretty cool. The next thing that we want to do is, apart from displaying it on the map, it would be nice if we can display it in a list so that we have an idea of what the coffee stores are, how far are they from our current location, and we can even go to those coffee stores or even call them. So let's go ahead and see that how we can start displaying list of places in our application. Next, we need to see that how we can display a list of all the places. So how can we do that? Well, we will need to add a places table view controller. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder. I will call it controllers. And inside that folder, I'm going to add places table view controller. Table view controller because it will be a table view controller. All right, we will display all the things in a table. I will import UIKit places table view controller, which will be a UI table view controller. All right. And the first thing we need to see that can we even display this places table view controller? And the next thing is, well, at what point should we display this places table view controller? I would like to show the table view controller as soon as the results are available. This means somewhere over here, we can probably show them. For that, I'm going to go ahead and create another function, and I will call it present places list or places sheet, whatever you want to call it. Present places in model, whatever you want to call this function. There we go. Okay. And over here, we're going to get the places table view controller. We will create places table view controller. And then we can say places table view controller dot modal presentation style, which will be set to page sheet, which will cover the whole page. And we can say if let sheet places table view controller dot sheet presentation controller. And now we can go ahead and give it, like, how do we want to display it? So prefer grabbers visible. So this is coming from the bottom. And we should be able to display it in multiple formats. Medium, that is kind of like a half screen. And large. And finally, you have to present it. So present and places table view controller animated true. So now we have a function called present places sheet. We can call it right after we are getting all the information, meaning right after we are getting all the places. Let's go ahead and run this. Now if we search for a shop like a burger or coffee, we should be able to also see the table view controller popping up. And there we go. It actually pops up. Nice. We can go to full screen. We can take it to the half screen. That is the bottom sheet stuff that is new in UIKit. But it's currently empty. I mean, it doesn't really display anything in there. We would like to display a list of all the places. So how can we do that? Well, one of the ways that we can do that is, first of all, we're calling present places sheet. We are not really passing anything to it. So maybe we should pass places to it, right? So how about we pass places, which will be places. Present places sheet, we'll go over here. And we may have to refactor this, but right now, I think we're going to go with this. So now we can pass an array of places. When we are creating the places table view controller, we need to pass all that information to places table view controller along with the user current location. So let's go ahead and pass user current location and also places, which are just the annotations. So we will say place annotation. And in the initializer, and make sure that we add the map kit. And now we can go ahead and create our initializer init, where you are going to pass in the user location, CL location. And the reason that we are passing the user location is that we want to also calculate the distance from our current location. So if we do not pass user location, then there's no way for us to calculate how far or close the place is. Let's go ahead and pass in the default constructor over here. There we go. We also need to implement the init coder. This is like if you were using storyboards or something, but since we're not, we don't really care that much about it. Next, we need to go back and make sure that we are passing the correct things to the places table view controller. So let's go ahead and build this places table view controller, passing in the user location. So this is where you have to pass in the user location. And in order to get the user location, we're going to use the location manager. Great. Now we can pass in the user location and we can pass in the places annotations. But even right now, it's not really going to display you anything because we haven't done anything inside the places table view controller. We will need to go ahead and add a table cell or register a table cell. So let's go and call register cell. We can do that by calling table view.register and registering a particular cell. We will call it UI table view cell. So we're going to just use the built-in cell and we will give it an identifier of place cell. And the identifier is actually very important because when you're using a table view, all of those cells that are displayed in the table view are recycled. So we're going to use the same cell but provide different data, and that is what causes the table view scrolling to be really, really fast. Next, we need to implement function like how many number of rows are in section. Places.count is fine. These are all the places. We don't really have any sections and we don't really want any sections, so we're not going to create it. And one of the most important functions or delegate functions of a UI table view delegate is the cell for row at index path. This particular delegate function is responsible for returning back the actual cell to the user. So we're going to create a cell. First of all, we're going to say, hey, go ahead and give us a cell that you already have. So we need to pass in the same identifier and the index path. Now, the first time the first cell is created, probably we may or may not have that cell. All right. Let's go ahead. So then it was created. Place equals to places index path dot row. So we get the place, and now we can go ahead and create the cell configuration. Cell configuration simply means that what kind of data this cell is going to display. So we will create cell.default configuration, and we will say the text will be the name of the place, and then we will also have the secondary text, which we will simply say right now secondary text, because we still have to figure out how to calculate the distance. So I'll just say secondary text right now. Next, cell.content configuration, and we will simply assign it to the content, and then we will simply return it. Great. Let's go ahead and run the application and see that if it displays anything in our table view or not. I'm going to go ahead and search for burgers. And there we go. It actually looks pretty nice. It's displaying us a list of all the places near Apple campus. We can also zoom out a little bit and see all these different places. Oops, I think I zoomed out a little bit more, but you can definitely see all these different places near Apple campus. And if I search for something else, probably coffee, then I get all these coffee stores. Awesome. So the name we have already figured out, and the name is getting displayed. That is great. The other thing that we want to do is, instead of secondary text, it should display us that how far is the store, the location, from our current user's location. And we are going to check it out in the next lecture. Now let's go ahead and see that how we can perform the calculation so that we will know that how far is the location from our current location. All right. Okay. So how can we do that? And then eventually we would like to display it in place of the secondary text. Currently it's just saying secondary text. We need to calculate the distance and then display it over here. So I'm going to start with creating a function, calculate distance. Now you can put this function somewhere else. If you think that you're going to be using this function somewhere else, then you can put it, you can extract it out. We are going to be passing in the from location and then the to location. And it's going to give us CL location distance. So from dot distance, and then we can simply perform this calculation. So it's already on a CL location. There is a function called distance available to you. And if you pass in the another CL location distance, then it's going to give you the calculated distance. Now, another thing that we want to do is to format it, because that's CL location distance is just going to give you a number, but we want to format it like 500 meters, 1.2 miles, things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and say format distance for display. And we are going to go ahead and pass in the distance, which is CL location distance. and it is going to give you the string. We are going to get it into meters and measurement for a value. This distance will be the value. The unit of this will be the meters, because that is currently what we will start with, meters. And then we will convert those meters using the converted function to miles, dot formatted. All right. Now we can call this particular function. So what we want to do is we want to call the calculate distance function, passing in the user location, that is our distance, this is our location, and then the place dot location. And then the result of that will be passed to the format distance for display. So whatever calculate distance returns, pass it to the format distance for display. Let's go ahead and run this. And now we will be able to see that how we can calculate the distance, and it will display in our list. So I'm going to go ahead and search for coffee. And it's so cool because it actually converts it into 3,900 feet or 1.3 miles. And you can go ahead and look for all of these coffee shops. And now you can see that they're displaying the distance in feet or miles, depending on that how far they are. So we are able to do that. Another thing that we would be interested in doing is when we select one of these annotations on the map, it would be nice if the places list shows up again, and it would be really nice if we are able to highlight the selected one. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that in the next lecture. Now we're going to see that how we can get access to the selected annotation on our map. In order to do that, we are going to make sure that our view controller is conforming to MK map view delegate. This means that all the different map view delegate functions, which means did select, did unselect, you have a view for annotation, we can implement all of those things when necessary. Before we do that, we have to scroll up to the actual map view where we created, and we need to tell the map view that the delegate for the map view is self, where self is the view controller. This means that the view controller itself will be responsible for handling all those functions. So which functions or which delegate functions are we interested in? Well, there are many different functions. We're interested in whenever a particular annotation is selected from the map. So make sure that you select the one with the annotation, not annotation view. Once we select the annotation, we can go ahead and say annotation. We can go ahead and cast it to place annotation. And once we cast this to a place annotation, we can say place annotation. There we go. We can guard it. And if there's a problem, we can just return it at that point. All right. Make sure that you are assigning it. Now, once it does convert it to a place annotation, we should get the ID of that. So place annotation.id. And this ID refers to a particular place annotation. But now we are kind of in a problem. We need to find out that this place annotation that we just selected, does it belong in an array of annotations? But we don't really have an array of annotations. And the main reason for that is we never created our places array. We created the places array as a local variable. And maybe that was not such a good idea. So what we are going to do is go ahead and create a places array, but at the level that everyone can see. Right on the top, right here. And now we can use this places array. So let's go down and make sure that we are populating the places array. Right over here, you can see we created like a local variable, a private variable. Instead of that, we can actually use our places array. So we can say self and then assign it. And then we can simply iterate through it also. Okay. Let's go ahead and see what's going on over here. I think we forgot to add a self. So self. Now, one question does come to our mind that, okay, should we be even passing something to the present places sheet, or should we just leave it like that? I think that can be up to you. I mean, if you want to pass, you definitely can pass the information over there. If you just want to show the places sheet, since this is available, you can do that also. If eventually you move this function to somewhere else, then it might be a good idea to just leave it like this, so that you are actually passing something over there. At this point, I would also add places, unwrap it, and then probably I should call this particular function with the places. All right. And I thought that, okay, yeah, so it should be like self.places. So we should be able to call this function. All right. Now, another thing that we need to do is whenever the something is selected, which we were working on, we need to also call the places also. So let's go ahead and see what we can do over here. We get the place annotation. Now, using the self.places, we can search for that particular place, because now we can search using the ID. So if the ID matches the place annotation.id, then it's a match and we are able to get that particular annotation. All right, so I'm just going to say place annotation. Instead of calling this place annotation, I will just call it selected annotation. And the reason that we're doing that is that we want this to be the one that is coming from the places array, so that eventually we can say place annotation, and is selected true. And since it is by reference, it will automatically be selected. We can also call present places sheet, and then we can simply pass in the places again. There we go. So this time when we do select, it will mark that particular place annotation is selected, and it will present the places sheet. So let's go ahead and see how this works. If I go ahead and search for something, let's say if I'm searching for coffee, I can see different coffee stores. But what happens if I tap on one of these coffees? Okay, it actually does come up. So that's pretty cool. But it's still kind of hard to tell, like, which one is this? If I select this place annotation, which one of them is this? It's hard to tell. So we need to fix that. We already marked that particular place annotation to be selected true. So maybe we can utilize that part. Let's go back to our places table view controller. And in the places table view controller, we can create a property that will give us the index for selected row. This is the actual row that the user has selected. And we can do that by going through the places and passing or getting the first index where the is selected is true. That's why we selected or mark it as true. And whenever the page loads in the initializer, we can go ahead and say places.swap at index for selected row. Since we want to put it on the top, then we can say 0, or else the initial value can also be 0. Okay. All right, let's see what we're doing over here. There we go. We're going to make it var. So whenever we select a particular place, whenever we tap on a particular place, we are just going to make sure that that particular place is kind of like on the very top. And inside our cell for row at index path, we can check for the background color also. Cell.background color. If the place is selected, then go ahead and change the background color. It is up to you, whatever color that you want. I'm just going to say light gray. Else, just make sure that the color is clear. Now we can go ahead and run this. And I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm interested in drinking some coffee. Okay, great. And now I'm going to try to tap on the first one. And you can see that this is Starbucks. That's why the Starbucks is placed not only on the top, but also you can see that it is marked. Now we can go ahead and select any other annotation on the map. There are so many. Let's go ahead and select the one that is far away. And that is Phil's Coffee. If I select this one, well, that's again Phil's Coffee. It's kind of weird. I mean, how many Phil's Coffee do we have over there? That doesn't look right? Okay, that was actually right, I guess. So now this is sweet maple. Something doesn't look right over here. It's always giving me the same one. Oh, you know what's going on? Even though it might be switching places, but what it's doing is you can see all of them are selected now. All right, so that's definitely not what we want. So we need to clear up the selection. We need to clear the selections clear the selection as soon as you select something. We need to clear it up, kind of like reset it. Okay, so let's go ahead and see that how can we clear up these selections. So I'm going to jump into the view controller. And in this view controller, this is the did select, right? This is where we are going to go ahead and say clear all selections so that nothing is selected. And I'm going to call the function clear all selections. But what will this function do? Well, let's go ahead and implement this. Private function, and I think you can put it anywhere you want, but I'm just going to say clear all selections over here. And what I'm going to do is simply go through all of them and go through all of the places and mark them if selected to be false. That's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and run this again and see if that helps us or not. I'm going to say coffee. Okay, so that looks fine. Let's go ahead and see what this one is. This is some sort of a bakery cafe and it is selected. Hopefully when I select this one, it's different. Okay, definitely. Yeah, I was like confused that there can't be that many Phil's Coffee, right? So there we go. So it looks like it's selecting now, and it's only selecting one of them. You can see in the list that's the only one that is selected, and the one that is selected is moved to the top so that you don't really have to scroll. Great. Okay. The next thing we need to work on is I can go ahead and pick any of these coffees. I mean, if I click on Phil's Coffee or Starbucks or Sweet Maple, it should take me to the details screen where I can look up the directions and I can even call them if I'm using it on my phone. So we need to implement the details page also. So let's go ahead and do that in the next lecture. The next step for us is to make sure that we can take the user to a details screen where we can show the details about the selected location and also allow the user to get the directions from Apple Maps and make a call. This means that we need to jump into Places Table View Controller. In the Places Table View Controller, we can implement did select row at index path function. This is going to allow us to get a selected place, and it will also allow us to show us that what place we want to select. So how can we do that? Well, the first thing we're going to do is get the actual selected place. So we can say places from the index path dot row. That will be the selected place that you tapped on. The other thing that we want to do is to create a place detail view controller. So let's go ahead and add a new file, place detail view controller. Now, we don't really have that much information to display, so it might just be the name of the place with the address, and we will be able to display like the directions button and also placing a call button. So I'm going to go ahead and import UIKit, and we're going to go ahead and create a class called place. We just need to have one class, place detail view controller, which is going to be inheriting from UI view controller. You are going to be passing in a place annotation for this to work. There we go. And now we can create our initializer, which means that initializer is going to allow us to pass in a place annotation, and we can go ahead and set it up. We do need to call the main initializer, which is nil and nil. And now we can go ahead and call setup UI. This is going to allow us to set up the user interface. So I'm going to go ahead and simply say setup UI. Perfect. All right. The other function that we need to implement is the init with coder. This usually function is fired when you're using storyboards. So it will be, decoded from there, and then this function is fired to bring it to life. But since we don't really have any storyboards, we can simply say init coder is not implemented. Next, we'll go back to our places table view controller. And we're going to make sure that when you select a place, we can present place detail view controller. So I'm going to create place detail view controller, and this will be of type place detail view controller. We're going to pass in the place, which is the place annotation, and finally we can display the place detail view controller, animate it true. Let's go ahead and see if this works. Now, right now, place detail view controller doesn't really have much to display, so it's not really going to display anything. I'm going to go ahead and search for coffee. And if I select this, it does something, but it's kind of stuck at this point. You can see that it's kind of completely stuck at this point. So something is not working right in this case, right? So what exactly is going on? Well, we are calling did select row at index path and all that stuff. So that hopefully is correct. And then we are passing in the place detail view controller place. That should also be correct. Animated true is also fine. So we wondered that what exactly is wrong. Where did we mess up? All right. Let's go ahead and try to run it again, because it looks from our eyes, it looks perfectly fine. Okay, there we go. I'm going to again search for burgers. And as soon as we select, it tries to do something. It tries to kind of like open a new screen, or something weird is going on. So we definitely need to find out what exactly is going on and how we can solve this problem. If you jump into place detail view controller, it looks pretty small. There's nothing really much going on over here. But what we can do is we can implement viewDid load, and the problem might be that you are displaying the place detail view controller, but since it does not really have any view color, that's why it might not be appearing. It might be with the clear color, and that's why it looked kind of weird. So let's go ahead and change that. And now if I go ahead and run this, select something, you can see this new Place Detail View controller is popping up. Perfect. That is exactly what we wanted. Let's start with displaying the name. Once again, we are going to create a lazy property for our name label. You can see the number of lines are set to 0 so that it will also start wrapping it up. We have set the font to be Title 1, but you can use any font that you want. Inside the Setup UI, we are going to go ahead and start by creating Stack View. We will set the alignment for the Stack View to be leading. We're going to set a couple of other properties of Stack View, including the margin. These are all the UI-based properties. And we are setting the margin so that the Stack View is not completely touching the edges of the screen. So it's like a 20 points margin. Next, we're going to say name label.text equals to place.name. We are also going to make sure that the name label is added to the Stack View. And now we can go ahead and add a couple of constraints on the name label. And finally, making sure that the Stack View is actually added to the view. Okay. Let's go ahead and build it. And let's go ahead and run it to see it. I'm going to go ahead and search for coffee. And if I select this, you can see that in our Place Detail screen, we can see the name of the coffee. If I find a different name, I can try to click it. It looks like it's working fine. The other thing that we want to do, which we can do in a similar way, is displaying the address. So let's go ahead and create the address label. Once we have the address label, all that is needed to be done is to assign the address. So just like we assigned the name, I'm going to say address label.text place.address. Make sure to add this to your Stack View. There we go. And that is going to allow us to add the address label. Let's go ahead and see. Let's search for this time for burgers. And there we go. That's address label. So it looks pretty good. The next thing that we need to do is to add buttons, one for directions and one for making a call. Once again, we're going to go back and create them as a lazy property. The address button, and let's go ahead and create a call button. Okay. We created the button, but we still need to add those buttons. So we need to be making sure that those buttons are added, and we want to make sure those buttons are added in a horizontal fashion, meaning that they are side by side. So for that, we're going to create a context stack view. And we're going to add our directions button and the call button in the context stack view. And then finally, we're going to make sure that the main stack view does contain the context stack view. So at least we will have the buttons. So this is all that we need to create the display. So let me go ahead and search for coffee. And if I click on it, we have the direction button and call button. Great. If you click on the button, it doesn't really do anything. When I click on the directions button, it would be nice if Apple Maps kind of pops out and give me the directions. If I tap on the call button, then it should make a call if I'm running it on a real physical device, like my iPhone. So we still need to implement those two functions. And that is exactly what we are planning to do in our next lecture. Now let's go ahead and see that how we can add a directions button and also a button so that we can tap on it and it will call the place, the point of interest. It might be a restaurant, it might be a coffee shop, and so on. If I go ahead and search for coffee and select any of these coffees, I can see the buttons, the directions, and the call, but they don't really do anything. So let's go ahead and tackle our directions button first. We have already created the directions button, but we still need to add button click to it. So I'm going to go back to our place details detail view controller, and I'm going to say directions button dot add target, and I'm going to add it to self, which is place detail view controller, because we are inside there. And we're going to go ahead and call a selector that is going to call a function called directions button tapped, although the name of the button or the name of the function can be anything. Now we're talking about the event, meaning at what point should we do that. So the event that we are after is not touch, drag, exit, or touch, drag, enter. It's simply touch up inside when you actually press on the button. Okay. Now it's complaining because we don't really have any function called directions button tapped. So we need to create that function. We're going to provide the Objective-C over here, bridge, because that is called during or through the selector. It is going to give us the UI button, the button that was tapped. Inside the button, the first thing we can do is get the coordinate. So I'm going to go ahead and say coordinate place.location.coordinate. Now, what we're trying to do is to open up the Apple Maps application. So I'm going to go ahead and say URL. Going to create the URL. And this is where you will type in the actual URL that will allow the Apple Maps to open. And we are going to inject something over here. That will be coordinate.latitude with the comma. And the next thing will be, you can already guess, it's going to be longitude. We can unwrap this because it will going to give us that particular URL. If you want to do save, that is perfectly fine. Let's go ahead and do let. And if there is a problem, then we are not going to do anything. You can display a message or something, but right now we're not really going to do anything if there's a problem. Next, we're going to use App UI application, shared, open, and then open the URL. And that is going to allow us to automatically open the Apple Maps application, because this URL is kind of telling the Apple Maps to, hey, open up. So let's go ahead and run this. I'm going to go ahead and search for coffee. And let's go to Phil's Coffee and directions. And there we go. You can see that it is now trying to open the Apple Maps. And not only that it will open Apple Maps, it's also going to start the directions. So now you can press this go button, and that is going to start the directions. Pretty cool, right? The next thing that we want to do is to perform an action for call button tapped. So let's go back to our code. Just like the direction button, we're adding a target. So we're going to go ahead and add the call button dot add target self, which is the place detail view controller, selector, and now we can say call button tapped for touch up inside. Now we still need to implement this call button tapped, so let's go ahead and implement that part. Objective-C, call button tapped, sender, UI button. There we go. Now, one of the things you have to keep in mind is that we first of all have to create some sort of a URL. Okay, so let's go ahead and create that URL again. We're going to create a URL, but this URL is actually going to tell our phone to open up and start calling this number. Now, if I simply pass in the place.phone number, we will get the phone number. And we will get, like if I'm going to write it over here, the place.phone number will be something like this, 512, depending on where you're calling from. And then it will be like, I'm just going to put some random number over here, that. So that is the number that we're going to get, or similar number about the particular place. But what we need is a number that does not have any of the spaces. So what we need is kind of like the 512-435-2345. So we need number something like this. So we need to remove all of these things. We need to remove, I think there's a plus sign also over there somewhere. So we need to remove the plus sign. We need to remove these brackets. We also need to remove these hyphens. So if I simply pass in the phone over here and try to open this up using share.open, then it's not really going to work. Again, we can use a guard so that we are doing a little bit safely. So this is not going to work because the phone will be in this format, and the format that we need is the one without any special characters in it. So how can we do that? Well, we can go ahead and create an extension on the string. So I'm just going to go ahead and call string plus extensions. And when we're creating the string extension, we will extend the string by saying extension string. We can create a function called format phone for call, which is simply not even a function, it's like a property. And that will be responsible for replacing all of these things with kind of like empty string. So you can see that we are just replacing all of these things with string, like an empty string. And that is something that we can use. So now if I go back over here, I can go ahead and say format phone call or format phone for call, and that is going to start working. Now, the only way to check this is to run it on an actual device. If I try to run it right now, let's see what happens. Coffee. And if I try to call it, you can see that it's not really going to do anything over here because I'm running it on the simulator, but try to run it on an actual device. Then you will see that it will ask you that, hey, do you want to make a call to whatever the number that we're performing? And that is going to make a call to that particular point of interest, that restaurant, burger store, bakery, wherever you're calling. All right. So there you have it. We have created our complete application in UIKit, a real application where it can allow you to search for nearby points of interest, and it will show you on a map. It will not only show you on a map, but also show you a list. You can take a look at the distance that particular place is from your current location, as you can see. All right. And then you can also go ahead and call that place. You can go there, directions, call, whatever you need. So hope you have enjoyed it. Thank you very much.